Rock Talk. Rock Talk.
Welcome back to GrokTALK, brought to you every week by GrokTALK.com and the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers from Concord, New Hampshire. Check us out on Facebook. Visit us at GrokTALK.com. Do we have a guest? Not yet. We're having some phone problems. So we are trying to get Tony DeMott on the line. We had a bad connection. We were not able to get in touch with him. We are going to have Andrew Hemingway on next segment. He's going to be calling in because he's stuck up north. He sent me his phone number. That's what that dinking sound was that you heard earlier. That was Andrew sending me a little IM going, "Hey, I'm stuck up north. I can't get down there. Can I call you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's absolutely fine. We have no problems with the phone call." So welcome back to GrokTALK. We want to thank Leighton Stewart from plantsneedco2.org for spending some time with us. I think we could have spent another half hour talking about that subject. He knows a lot about it. Check out the website and
we need to look up his book and get that up on Granite Grok as well.
Well, I'm looking at his website, so it's probably on here someplace. I should probably go hunt it down
and find it on Amazon and put the link to monetize the connection.
Do you have an email for Tony?
Do I have one? Yeah. All right. Hang on. I got a UTalk. I'm gonna.
Okay.
You've got to have something to talk about.
I sure do. And as I say, and Leighton mentioned a number of good points. It was very interesting to hear what the upper limits of human CO2 tolerance are. And we aren't going to get anywhere close to those for a long time. And it's also interesting, he talked about the greening of the planet, but the evil Western capitalist countries, the richest amongst them, have in fact largely reforested and increased their farmland.
Tony.
CO2, of course, is part of that, but the other thing is that a free economy actually tends to restore resources because the resources are properly managed.
All right, we have our guest.
Okay,
thank you so much for filling in.
I'm going to quit rambling and let's go Liberty.
All right, we have from Campaign for Liberty in Michigan, Tony DeMott. We have resolved our phone issue. Tony, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Oh, good.
Pleasure to be on.
Good you're there. Sometimes we have issues with phone connection. Not very often, but once in a while. So it's great to have you here. We met you a couple weeks ago. I think it's a couple weeks now.
Yeah.
And we were talking about activisms and grassroots and all that good stuff. And I know I emailed back and forth about a couple of topics, but we didn't really settle on anything. So what would you like to talk about?
Oh, all kinds of things.
Okay.
Let's talk about bad politicians.
Oh, we like that subject.
Yes, we've got plenty of those around here.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about them. What do you got? Who's your worst politician in New Hampshire?
That would be the rogue Republicans, the Republicans in the New Hampshire State Senate that single-handedly helped to implement Obama's Medicaid expansion here in the Live Free or Now Dependent state.
And by the way, there's a close parallel in Connecticut. You know that nasty gun law they got? It was proposed by the Senate Republicans.
Yeah, in Michigan, we actually were able to stop the exchanges, the Obamacare exchanges, but it's Republicans that gave us Medicaid expansion.
Great.
Yeah.
They did that here, too, and that's our biggest problem. We have these Republicans who said that if they didn't do something, that the Democrats would do something worse. How often do you hear that story?
Oh, that's a popular excuse for stealing liberty.
And
if I don't steal your liberty now, then someone's going to do it later, so I might as well do it now.
And then they can do it more later, and you'll still end up in hell.
Yeah. I mean, it's this whole thing. We're just progressing towards, the totalitarian state via incrementalism.
So let's talk about what our grassroots activists can do. I know we had a little discussion about this a few weeks back, but what would you like to share to help motivate people to step on the toes and so on of these would-be Republicans?
Make them feel the pain.
Yes.
Bring out the cat o' nine tails. Metaphorically speaking.
Well, what I would do is I'd pick a few of those targets. I'd look at their districts, find out who is in a vulnerable district, meaning kind of a swing district. So to do that, you got to kind of not just look at the last election, but you got to look at the elections over the last 5 to 10 years and see find what districts have been swinging, and then go into those districts in mass and start contacting the voters, start knocking on the doors, putting flyers on cars at the supermarket, all that kind of stuff, and start really just hammering those bad Republicans in those districts, and take care of the low-hanging fruit first, and then go after the others. And of course, you've always got to have, if you're gonna try and knock somebody out of an elected position, you need to find and recruit people to replace them. So there's always building that farm league of liberty activists and liberty legislators via city councils and county commissions and all of those those lower offices, which are really just the farm league for the establishment and the status. And people ask me this question all the time: is there seems to be no end of candidates for these people, and we have trouble finding candidates. And a lot of that is because we're not taking advantage of this farm league, getting people experience in government and getting people experience with scaling back government on a local level will prepare them for then scaling back government on a state level, which will then prepare us for scaling back government on a federal level.
One of the things that we put up once in a while is there's a guy in Washington that goes around and does man-on-the-street interviews. And the latest one was, could you name the Oscar-winning song? And most of the college-age people and that age range could name that, but they couldn't even name their own senator. It's a lot of apathy to what government does for a lot of people. They don't care. They're very much living their lives versus being civically minded. How hard do you find it to turn that mantra around to where you can get the liberty candidates? Tell people and convince people, yes, our liberties are being stolen. We need you in the trenches.
Well, there's some folks that just flat out don't care, and a lot of folks, they're busy with life. This is the catch-22, is that government has created a situation where we have to focus so much on providing for our families that we now don't have the time to pay attention to them. So, the cost of living's going up, we've got to work harder, we've got to work more, and we don't have the time to pay attention to them. So then people stop paying attention, so they've got to take care of their families, and things get worse. And, that's a real tough one to overcome. But what I've found is that if you pick good fights, people will follow you. People will get up off their couch. And some of the best fights are the local fights, and so, like in New Hampshire, the fights against the militarized vehicles. Most average folks don't want military, running around on their streets and in their communities. They don't want a militarized community. They don't want to walk out their front door and feel like they're in a war zone. And so, picking good fights like that, and then getting to the community members. People aren't just going to suddenly find your website. They're not suddenly going to find your petition. You've got to get out into those communities, and you've got to talk to people. So what we do in Michigan is we really encourage our activists to get out locally, and so we encourage them to develop a petition on a local issue, and then just spend a couple hours a week, on the weekends, go out and knock a few doors for an hour or 2 hours. And it may sound like, okay, that's small potatoes, but if you do this 2, 3, 4 times a month, and you run this throughout the course of the year, even just the warm months where it's nice to be outside and walking around, then what you'll do is, you'll build up a good size contact list of people that agree with you on that issue. And then, of course, you've always got to focus it on the politician. So, your goal is to get a politician to do something. And if they don't do something, then there needs to be a punishment. So the petition will say, okay, we are petitioning politician so-and-so to vote to remove these militarized vehicles. And you go around the community and you get the signatures. And then you go back to, say, the city council and you say, okay, we've got 100, 200, 300 signatures in your district, people that want you to vote to remove these militarized vehicles. So now we want you to bring this up for a vote. And, of course, they're going to stonewall because what do politicians like to do most? Nothing. So
that's not quite true. They want to be praised for trying to do something, which is why we get these reams and reams of new laws and regulations every year. Because anytime there's the slightest little burp anywhere, they want to be seen to be doing something to protect us. But when it comes to doing what we want, they want a quiet life.
Yes. So, they're more than willing to do anything if there's no controversy to it. So let me qualify that statement. What do politicians want to do on controversial issues? Nothing. Because they know one side or the other is going to be mad. They don't want to make anybody mad. They just want to get reelected.
Tony, another question, and I'm going to jump from one end of the spectrum to the other. And I mentioned this just a little bit ago, that the syndicated columnist and often TV pundit now on Fox News, George Will, wrote in his latest column that he fully expects the American people to rise up against an abusive government. And I kind of look at those words going, here's somebody that I would categorize as an establishment Republican kind of guy. And the fact that he is writing this, and we're seeing the situations happening in Connecticut and New York with the guns. We're seeing the Bundy ranch out in Nevada, and just all the things that are happening, and people are starting to push back. Do you think that this is a good thing for liberty-minded people, that that people that are starting to wake up are going, where is my freedom going? And do you think that this is going to result perhaps in a restart of the Tea Party movement that swept over the country 5 years ago?
Oh, well, I think it's absolutely critical that we continue to wake people up or activate people. Will it be a restart of the Tea Party, or will it be a restart of some hybrid form of this movement? I certainly hope so. In Michigan, there are good Tea Parties and there are bad Tea Parties, but I would say overwhelmingly the Tea Party folks are very much aligned with the Campaign for Liberty perspective, with the libertarian-leaning perspective, and they're very friendly to that. So as some people don't speak favorable of the Tea Party because they claim they've been co-opted. Those are just the Tea Parties that get a lot of money and can be real kind of vocal and upfront. So I do hope that there is a resurgence, and it's certainly a danger because the Ron Paul campaign was a big impetus for a lot of folks, and so they got in, and we started getting these folks into battles with the establishment. And those of us that have been leaders in this movement, we understand that we're going to take a lot of beatings before things really start to improve. But your average, folks don't necessarily want to stick around to take those beatings. So there is a danger that activists and liberty activists are going to quit and go home, especially with the work that a lot of us have been doing within the Republican Party, trying to kick out bad leadership and bring in good leadership, and trying to turn the Republican Party from just a big government promotion racket to actually promoting liberty. There's a real danger there, and I want to caution your listeners that yes, it's hard. Yes, we are taking beatings right now, but stay in. We're seeing some successes. We will continue to be successful, and it's a numbers game. So I really want people to stay active. If they don't, then what they can expect is that they can see more of the same, and that's more government, more tyranny.
Tony, we're going to take a quick 60-minute break, 60-second break. Sorry, I'm messing with my dials and knobs here because when we have phone calls, sometimes we have problems with the quality of the sound. We're going to take a 60-second break. Stay on the line. We'll be right back.
When asked whether she still supports Obamacare, Senator Jeanne Shaheen said,
"Yes, I do continue to support the law. We're beginning to see some positive results."
How can Senator Shaheen say we're seeing positive results when 22,000 of our neighbors have already lost their health insurance? What's worse, the Boston Globe reports the state's only health insurance provider radically reduced the number of hospitals in their network, forcing some people to drive over an hour for lab work, even when there's a hospital within a few miles of their home. When pressed about lack of access, Shaheen said,
There are some hospitals that are not covered, unfortunately, and I certainly hope that's going to change.
Jeanne Shaheen promised us we could keep our doctors and our healthcare coverage. Now she hopes we can get to a local hospital? Call Senator Shaheen at 603-647-7500. Tell her we need more than hope. We need leadership. Paid for by Citizens for a Strong New Hampshire.
All right, we're back with Tony DeMott from Campaign for Liberty in Michigan. And we're talking about keeping people active and trying to keep your grassroots activists. Mike wanted to say something, and I had to cut him off. Mike, go ahead and jump in.
Well, I think we're seeing. Tony was saying about if we don't stay active, we're going to see a slide into tyranny. I think what happens is effectively the politicians that are currently active are cutting off the most conservative 20% of the electorate. They're fighting over the weak Republicans and the squishy middle with the Democrats. And they think the fight is in the squishy middle, and they don't seem to care about what should be the Republican base. If you took all of the conservative and liberty-leaning people in the country, you'd probably have more like 40 to 45%, and then it's not so much of a stretch to get to a majority. If you cut the bottom 20% off and you try and argue over the rest, two things happen. First of all, your Republicans don't win as often, like Mitt Romney, and secondly, you're ceding the ground, you're moving the Overton window in the direction of tyranny.
What do you think, Tony?
Oh no, I think that's very aptly said. That's a fight that we've been having in Michigan within the Republican Party. Is are we going to move to the center to try to capture these, to try to win over Democrats at the cost of the liberty and conservative folks? And it seems pretty obvious to me that we move towards the center, and yes, we get this appearance that we're going to steal these votes from the Democrats, but these folks all, in the end, just go vote Democrat anyway. It's a losing strategy on their part. The question is how long is it going to take them to realize that, or do they even care?
In some cases, they're flat out antithetical to that approach. They don't want the base. The base is inconvenient. The base demands things.
Oh, absolutely, and that's really, it's highly underreported. The real war that is going on within the Republican Party, and you're starting to see, Lindsey Graham has been censured by party activists. John McCain censured by party activists. We were looking at a censure of the Michigan Republican chair, Bobby Shostak, because it appears that he keeps, every time conservatives and liberty loses in Michigan, Bobby Shostak seems to be coming out of that, profiting with his construction company. So after we lost Medicaid expansion, suddenly it comes out that Bobby Shostak's construction company is getting a big contract plus a $27 million taxpayer incentive to build the building that is going to house the company that's going to handle all of these new Medicaid sign-ups. So, you really can't prove anything legally on that, but you look at this over and over. So not too long ago, a law was rushed through Michigan that was basically letting specific companies off the hook for contracts that they had entered into, and it turns out Bobby Shostak's company, Shostak and Brothers Company, they were in a contract with for something that was called the Cherryland Mall up in northern Michigan, and they had failed to meet the requirements of that contract. There was a court case that was found that they still needed to, pay up on that contract. The legislature then rushed through. This is one of the quickest bills that's ever, that's gone through the Michigan legislature since I've been watching it. Rushes through a bill that retroactively gives them immunity from that lawsuit. So, there's just this continued pattern of Republican leadership, and I'm sure this is going on with the Democrats. I don't think that they are performing to any higher of a moral standard, but there's this continued pattern of Republican leadership seeming to come out profiting after conservatives and liberty folks have lost, and it's this pattern. So you can't really say, okay, there's something illegal here, but you can certainly look at it and say, all right, there's bad leadership here. Anybody in the leadership of the Republican Party that's going to profit off of a loss in a fight that the base of the Republican Party is so passionate for, and they're fighting so incredibly hard, there's a conflict of interest. Good leadership should remove that conflict of leadership or conflict of interest. And so this is what we're seeing. It's horrific.
It's the same thing here that we watched the leadership in the New Hampshire House vote a number of times, almost the majority of the times, against their own membership in the House as far as the Republicans are concerned. You look at the aforementioned example of Medicaid expansion by the New Hampshire Senate against the far majority of the activists and the Republican Party faithful here in New Hampshire as well. And then they get upset when we call them the junior partners of the Democrat Party. Do you think that at some point the base is going to say, we've had enough of you, and they're not even going to bother to oust these people? And I know that's something that you've already said, take over the party, not leave the party. But do you think that there's enough people who are getting so dissatisfied with the party politics that they're going to go off and try to do it on their own, either at a state level or probably at the national level? Oops, did we lose Tony? Tony,
are you there?
We lost Tony.
We lost Tony. Oh no!
All right, I will try to get Tony back.
You get Tony back. I will. I got to turn your mic on first.
Yeah. So I got to point on what he was describing, because I actually don't believe that that is not illegal. What just happened in Michigan, I think it is absolutely illegal and unconstitutional, and that moves should be made to put these people in jail. And the reason I think so is that, first of all, the Constitution nationally and in most states explicitly forbids ex post facto legislation where something is made legal or illegal retroactively. And secondly, it also explicitly forbids bills of attainder which penalize a particular class of persons. In this case, the bills passed in the Michigan legislature explicitly changed the law after the fact, ex post facto, and explicitly penalized one class of persons, to wit, this guy's creditors, which is a bill of attainder. This is flat out illegal and unconstitutional, and these guys should be strung by their nether parts from a gallows.
Did you hear that? What do you think? Is that a good strategy?
Yeah, I lean more towards that every day.
All right, so we've got about where'd my clock go? We got about 5 minutes left. Some quick grassroots strategies to help people out. I know we talked about it a little bit at the beginning of this show, but I know you've said get out, get some petitions, build some lists. Once you get your lists, what are you going to do?
Well, you got to keep them involved. So you have to pick good fights, and so you need to pick fights that your folks are going to be excited about and want to get involved on, and you always make sure you have a target. So always make sure that there's a politician on the other end of your wrath. And my advice is, if you don't have anything good to say about a politician, well, let me rephrase that. If you don't have anything bad to say about a politician, you shouldn't say anything at all.
So, yeah, this is a shift of policy for us at the Grok after our discussions with you, where we had previously said we'll thank them when they're right. Now we'll only thank them if they are actually champions for a particular cause we are espousing, and otherwise we will reserve our fire for their.
I've taken Tony's advice to heart. I'm not going to say good things about anybody.
Oh, we hate them all.
No, they're going to have to assume that silence means they're not on my target list, and I think that's probably the best strategy. So building petition lists is important, and you talked about doing it for specific issues. How hard of a time did you guys have finding people to physically go out and door knock?
Well, it's not too tough. I have folks, mother and father and kids, and they'll make that part of their daily walk. They'll take the whole family around and with the stroller and walk around the neighborhood, get some exercise, and they will knock on some doors. So there's ways to find that time. Almost always you have to, maybe not watch that football game or not watch that TV show, which in my opinion is well worth giving up for saving our country.
And we've had a couple different strategies here. We have a lot of different grassroots groups, and then of course we have some grass tips groups as well. But most of the activists are in a gun group or a life group or in another thing, so they are kind of involved. But we've tried to come up with different ways to coalesce these people, and I think that the idea of really, we have all these people poking their stick at a different animal, and we really need to coordinate them, and I think we're going to take some of the advice we got from you to heart and try to really get people to focus on politicians specifically and bills specifically, which we are actually pretty good at. But we're running to the end of the segment here. I wanted to, if you could provide people with some contact information, so that if you would like to share some information with them or get them involved with something Campaign for Liberty does, how would they reach you?
Well, they can go to campaignforliberty.org. They can get on that website and they can look up their state and local groups. We are working right now on finding a good, serious state leader in New Hampshire, and we have a couple of prospects there. So if folks want to get involved, that's the best way to do it.
All right, we're going to have to cut you loose now. Thank you very much for Tony for taking time to talk to GrokTALK. You have a great weekend.
Thank you.
We'll see you. All right, next half hour, Andrew Hemingway will be on the phone with us because he couldn't get to the studio, got stuck up north. And we'll be back with him to talk about things New Hampshire governor's race, and all things, did I say New Hampshire? I did. This is GrokTALK. Steve McDonald here. You ever notice how Democrats like to create problems so they can then claim to solve them? Take Medicaid expansion, for example. Even if the federal government keeps its promise to New Hampshire to pay for most of it, it'll still cost New Hampshire taxpayers tens of millions of dollars more to provide inferior care and coverage to people who, for the most part, would never have needed it if Democrats hadn't reformed healthcare in the first place. That's right, that real expensive reform that doesn't care if it's only affordable if you act like you don't need insurance. Well, its number one claim to fame at this point is how many more people it forced onto Medicaid. And that's only because Obamacare kicks tens of millions of people off the plan they liked and were told they could keep but couldn't. So Medicaid expansion was always part of Obamacare for a reason. Democrats knew all along that the Affordable Care Act was unaffordable and they'd need to make Medicaid bigger and more expensive, so when people got their plan kicked to the healthcare curb, they could still sign up for something, even if it was something as crappy as Medicaid. This is Steve McDonald for GrokTALK, and we'll keep shining the light on them for you.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested, riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at gerardatlarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
This is a coalition of New Hampshire taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is a repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
Grok TV.